I'm Sue Nowak, one of the council members on the subcommittee for the library, and Michael Harris here with me is the other council member on the subcommittee. We want to welcome you to our fourth and final town hall meeting on the library. Very excited to show you all the slides tonight. I'm not going to talk about much details. We'll leave that to the experts. The presentation is going to be relatively quick and go through the whole process, and then we're going to leave time at the end for more informal questions. We have boards, as you can see over that side. They'll be flipped around. There'll be a lot of the pictures from the slides. You'll be able to come up and talk to any of the architects, landscape architects, ask questions. You can leave comments on index cards, and feel free to have interaction that way rather than have a longer presentation with questions in the middle. So with that, do you have anything you wanted to add? Nope.
Thanks for being here. I'd like to introduce the principal involved with this project, David Andrini from BCJ. And David's going to introduce the rest of his crew.
All right. Got my clicker. So, number 4, Town Hall number 4, which is pretty cool. Just raise of hands. Who all has been here through all town halls? Wow. I mean, wow. I have a prize for you. It's a ribbon. It's the Award of Excellence. There'll be no more ribbons today. All right. So this should be familiar to everybody who's been here. This is the team that has been represented here at these town halls and other community engagement activities and whatnot. It's a tip of the iceberg, really. There is 3x this in terms of other consultants and specialists involved in the project, all having a very meaningful contribution. But this is the group that we're interacting with today, and with us in the room today is just about everybody except for Maddie. She's not here, and Ashley. But everybody else is in the room. I'm going to just give a quick orientation, and then Mark, sorry, where did I get Mark from? Carl and Mike and Margaret and Sarah will all be presenting. And we have a guest speaker today in Patrick. He'll join us up here as well. And it's going to look like this. This is our day today. I'm going to do a quick orientation. I realize that I am standing between you and all of the exciting stuff that they're going to share design-wise, so I'll be brief out of self-preservation. And then Sarah's going to speak about site and landscape design, and Mike and Carl are going to come up and share the updates with the building, and then Patrick and Margaret are going to come up here, and they're going to talk a little bit about how we're going to, their vision for how we would use this library, all the exciting things we're going to be able to do in the library. So where are we? We're in design development. It's a phase, sort of a typical nomenclature called design development, where this is where we get into some of the nitty-gritty of the design. We previously had been through a programming phase. We completed schematic design. That was the last town hall. And we're going to finish this design development phase at the end of January. At which point, so we're in the middle of it. So this is a great time for us to get your input. And then we're going to move on to construction documents, which is the instructions that the contractor will use to build the drawings, to build the building. So how do we get here? Lots of community engagement, different kinds. We had focus sessions with specific groups of users. I think we had 18 of them, or something like that, a lot. And they were just trying to get a really wide range of experiences people using the library. We had staff working group sessions. We had design sessions with the subcommittee. We obtained survey results. And we had, of course, our town halls. And this being number 4. Yes, you may find yourself in here if you look hard enough. So the town halls, we had 2 of them early on, November, so almost a year ago, really almost like 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks from a year ago is when we started this process with our first town hall. And we had 2 town halls where really the focus was programming. And that's where we learned about what the spaces we would need to incorporate into the library. And then we had our town hall in June, and that was in the middle of the schematic design phase. And then we completed schematic design, and we had a presentation to the city council. And then, then we are where we are today, November, and we're in the midpoint of design development. So that's kind of where we are time-wise. And here we are in our design sessions with the subcommittee meeting. In terms of location, and where we are in terms of our site, one thing that's new, that's additional information from our last town hall is we now know with some certainty who our neighbors are. So we have the ball fields to the north of us. We have housing to the west of us. It's housing development. And we're really happy with the way this turned out in terms of who's where, because it's a really great opportunity to have we have sort of a symbiotic relationship thing going with Rec and Park at this point, because we can share all kinds of site development, site improvement, site strategies in a really smart way. And then the opportunity, we're all working on these projects at the same time, so there's a great opportunity for us to sort of stitch this together in a really cohesive way. So we're excited about that. Before I pass on and pass on the mic to Sarah, who's going to take us through the site and landscape design, just a brief reminder of some of these principles that have guided us all the way through this process. They've been with us from really the very beginning of the design process, and they've held true for us. So one of it is just sort of the orientation of the building, which is elongated along Oak Park. And now that we have the ball fields, with the ball fields to the north of us, the parking is positioning the building this way allows the parking to be between us and the ball fields, which allows us to share the parking, which is really a smart way to kind of reduce the amount of asphalt we have in our landscape. And it's also great orientation just for solar purposes, kind of minimizing western solar gain. And then we have paying attention to the views to the creek, which has been something that's guiding design principle for us, and also thinking really hard about how to mitigate the scale difference between this building and the houses across the street. So adding these sort of pavilions, if you will, and that's been true with us all this time. And then lastly, thinking about how the building should be welcoming. When you walk in the door, you should feel like you've been embraced by this environment. And the idea that the orientation of the building, the length of it, and these ponds allow us to begin to sort of deal with this delicate balance we're trying to thread, which is having one intergenerational space that everybody feels like they're a part of, while at the same time allowing for some busyness in one area of the building and a little bit more quiet at the other end of the building. And we'll get into that. What was that? Is that an email reminder? So you'll see these threads carrying through, but at this point, I'll have Sarah take us through the site landscape design.
Thank you. Sorry, a little loud there. Can I stand here?
You may.
Okay. I'm not going to do this. I can't do two things at once. Does this go in here? I guess I'll hold it. That's fine. No. How's that? Okay. Well, we're super excited to be back, and we've been working with the architects and really the whole design team on putting together not sort of what's left after the building, but a sort of cohesive design that puts together the building, the landscape, and actually the ball fields as well. Since the beginning of the project, one of the things we heard from the community, and one of the things that is very particular about this site, is that it's next to the creek, and that's something that was very important and very clearly stated early on. And we've given a lot of thought to how to be near the creek without overtaking the creek, and how to be realistic about what our project can do. So In the existing condition, the creek is pretty narrow in terms of a landscape experience. There's, a smallish channel, and then it goes fairly quickly to the field on our side. So a big part of what we want to do is to augment the planting on our side and to make more of this sort of wonderful setting of the creek. We won't be working in what would truly be the riparian channel, but we will be augmenting that feeling of being at the creek. And I think to the average person, they wouldn't know when they cross the line into the riparian channel. So we've thought a lot about that and a lot about how to have enough space between us and the creek on that side of the building. As we've developed the project, you'll notice a couple of things if you're paying attention. One is the building used to be at a slightly different angle, and it's rotated ever so slightly now, so it's squared up to the parking lot. It also is a little smaller, not a lot smaller, but a little smaller, and there's a little more space between the building and the creek. And we've made a much bigger gesture that we're calling the garden, but I think it could also be called a habitat buffer or a natural garden. It's not a garden in the sense of manicured garden. The program that you see on the right is the program that we worked with all of you and with Margaret on to establish what's going to happen here. What are the things that need to happen in this place? And so I'll talk about these in more detail, but they're the ones that we showed you at schematic design and the ones that we still have today. And a part of what we're doing is trying to get things located near the library to extend program outside, but also to connect trails for bikes and peds and sort of a sense of arrival beyond the actual site of the library. For today's conversation, just for sort of tracking, we'll walk around the building, starting with one, which is Monticello Avenue, and this new opportunity really to arrive at a set of civic places, the library, the ball fields, the middle school, the other park, and that's an amazing set of things for a community to have near one another. We'll also talk about the yard, which is a space that is fenced but is outdoors and part of the library, the arrival and drop off, and then finishing with the creek. So first, Monticello. Monticello is under study right now, but we feel that we will be able to achieve a section which is really welcoming and civic and makes you feel like you're supposed to come here. It has bike lanes newly on it, and it will sort of welcome you into all of these amenities with a kind of stately planting. I'll talk specifically about what plants and that kind of thing at the end of this, but we're working to have plants that will be appropriate to this climate, but also have a kind of stature and elegance that is appropriate to the community. The yard is located immediately adjacent to Monticello Avenue, and this, I think, is going to be an incredibly important place to everyone in the community, to have a place where you can come in the front door of the library, be outside, and then also go back into the library. It's a secure space. It will extend a lot of things that are already happening inside the library. We've talked about it as an opportunity for just a view to a garden, and there's going to be beautiful trees in the space. It's also a place where if you wanted to do paper mache and slosh water on the ground, or maybe they're visiting petting zoo goats, we've talked about all kinds of things. This is where you could do it, so you didn't get the library dirty. There'll be some opportunity for play for kids that's more vertical on the outside wall, and the actual floor plan of it is a circuit, so kids can run around. So if you're at story time and you're getting wiggly or you need a snack, you can come out and do something outside and then come back in and join it. But also at other times of the day, it would be a great place to read a book outside under the shade of these trees. The promenade and arrival plaza is something that a lot of thought has gone into about wanting it to feel very, very welcoming, thinking about the microclimate of where we are and wanting to have shade, wanting it not to feel that between 2 and 5 p.m. on a school day you have to cross a gauntlet of middle schoolers to get in the front door, and sort of a number of other design parameters of what would make a really elegant entrance to the library that was welcoming. David's talked a lot about this sense of an embrace as you arrive, and I think the trees together with the building are making that happen. The way this is currently structured, the building roof for the entry, you can see a little bit beyond. It lifts up and sort of welcomes you in, and on either side of it, there's a grove of a triple row of trees that has gravel underneath it and movable furniture. So if you wanted to sit out there, a very stately, and we've talked a lot about the character of these trees not being too dark and shady, allowing views through. And then we're still talking about having a place in the parking lot where you can sequester off a small piece of the parking lot pavement to use for other programs. So we're getting double purpose out of that paving. The last part is probably where we've had the most change, and in some ways is really exciting for the project. I think, as you all know, we've been looking at how to control the area and how to make the area successful in terms of a buffer for the creek and also a great setting for the library. And there is a meadow that will also be able to take additional waters as needed. And so we're imagining there's quite a bit more space here now that allows us to have a really robust piece of native planting with trails on this side of the creek, and potentially in the future to connect across the creek to the Ebmud Trail. In all of our thinking about this, I think you have noted that we've talked about plants, and we've talked about wanting plants to be an important part of the design. We've actually worked hard to minimize the amount of pavement in the design. Some of you know a lot about plants, and I would love to talk to you in great detail about it after the presentation. The main thing I wanted to communicate to the group is that plants are tricky, and you're always weighing a whole bunch of criteria. So this is our current wheel of things that we have to comply with to have success with our plants, including really basic things like, can you buy them in the marketplace, but also the fact that we're going to be using reclaimed water, which is high in salts. So we're looking at all of these things to make good selections for plants and to do things that will perform well over time and not cause a lot of issues with maintenance. Currently, the majority of the plants are native. There are some places, and this is one which is the promenade tree, where we're considering some things that are climate appropriate but not necessarily native, for structure, for form, for match specimen availability, and we'll continue to work on this as we go forward. At the creek and in the upland, where we're sort of augmenting the creek landscape, we have a sort of oak-heavy palette, I would say. And we also have a palette that isn't maybe making places that are too dense at the ground. We're trying to keep view lines open and make it seem like it's a very spatial, you can look across it landscape in this area. And underneath that, there's obviously more plants than this, but this is a good idea about the range of kinds of things that we'll be doing, which is almost 100% native in that buffer. So in conclusion, I think that the big shift in many ways for us in terms of where we were in schematic design versus where we are in design development has been that we've have more space between the building and the creek, and we've really been attending to some of these questions of sustainability and how to deliver the project within the budget and so forth with the maximum sustainable value. So we have a habitat garden and buffer, which has gotten a lot bigger. We have stormwater treatment in that area, which will be great for making a range of plant palettes and types. We have we'll be cleaning up the existing riparian corridor, which means removing trash and removing invasive plants. We're working to have connected trails and a great bicycle experience. And we're working to minimize heat gain, both on the building and also for heat islands in the parking lot. So when you look at all of this and you consider that we're sharing the parking lot with the ball fields, we really have a lot of planting and not so much paving, which I'm personally super excited about. And that is an update on where we are to date, and I'm going to pass it on to Mike.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everybody. Great to be back. For those who don't remember me, my name is Michael Cross. I'm an architect at BCJ. and I'm here with Carl Backus, and we're going to walk you through the updates to the building design. Okay, so before we launch into our updated renderings and views, I just wanted to remind everybody a lot of the planning principles that guided the development of the plan and ultimately the project. This is an image that we've constantly been updating since programming, which talks about the places and spaces of the new library and also their desired adjacencies. And this has mapped out into our current plan. So what you're seeing up on the screen now is a view of the building with the roof taken off. So you can see the layout of the floor plan. Was there the, yes, great. I'll just point out a few things. So I'll walk you through this, but before I do that, there's essentially three main zones to the building. This would be the northern zone. This is off the entry plaza, the parking lot's up here to the north. So the northern zone has the welcome area and service areas, staff work areas. There's the main hall of the library, this large open space. And then there's this grouping of 3 pavilions at the south, which face Oak Park Ave down at the south. So as you come in off the plaza, you're going to enter this welcome area behind this tall glass wall. And that's going to have book check-in, check-out stations, book drop-off. It'll have a welcoming screen to talk about events that are happening in the library. And a series of display tables for the library to really put up front in the library popular materials and things they really want to showcase, along with a gallery wall on this side. Adjacent to that would be the restrooms and an area for community bulletin boards. So entering off that welcome area, you're going to enter the Great Hall of the library, and this central space has a circulation desk, so a very clear, direct access to the main service point. Into this flexible seating area, which leads to the centered pavilion of the Story Lab. And that Story Lab is going to house all the story times, but also lectures, events, assembly-type spaces, and then also be used as a very flexible space for the library to program a multitude of things during the regular day. So that is really the center of the library. And then we're going to go off the welcome area back up here to the east. Across the restrooms is the Friends bookstore, and then into what we call the Cafe Vibe, which is a space where you can go and eat a snack, read, but it's not going to be a full-service cafe. So it's really a place where you can eat if you bring something in or have a cup of coffee. There's an outdoor reading room off of that space where you can go outside. This is covered, so in the summer it's shaded. And you can be outside a little bit before coming back into the library. And then back down off the central space are the adult collections, holds shelving, the community tech zone entrepreneurial center, a couple study rooms, and this what we're calling the community living room on the east side, which has this really dramatic view of the creek to the east. And then moving down, this pavilion at the east, we're calling the lounge, is an enclosed space meant for quiet reading and study. So there will be 2 sets of doors here around a solid niche that will have seating and a multitude of lounge seating arrangements with a corner window looking again out to the creek landscape. So we're going to come back across towards the west side of the building. We'll have youth collections, an after-school hangout area, early literacy collections, a couple more study rooms, and then this westernmost pod is the Messy Maker Lab, which is where the library will program anything and everything, most likely. Everything from robotics clubs. And Patrick and Margaret are going to talk a little bit more about all of these spaces and what will happen at the end of the presentation. So I'll let them describe some of that. So moving again further west, the early literacy area bookends this side of the building. And then out to that would be access to the yard that Sarah mentioned just prior. And then on the northern side here, this would be the materials processing for the staff work areas, mechanical and electrical rooms, and staff access. Okay. So this is the same view with the roof put back on. So we can talk a little bit about the massing of the building. The main hall and most of the northern portion of the building has a large sloping roof that's sloping up towards the south. So the roof is lower above these spaces at the top of the building that don't need such a high ceiling. And the vaulted ceiling really starts when you get into the main hall. The entry has its own roof element that pitches the opposite direction towards the north. So we get this really tall north-facing wall, letting in a lot of beautiful light to the entry space. And then the 3 pavilions to the south help, they have this volumetric expression which relates a little bit to the neighborhood across the street and help shade the building a little bit from southern sun. 2 rows of skylights we're showing here to get some diffuse, balanced light deep into the floor plate of the building. And we're showing areas for solar panels on the roof. We're working through this with the city, and we'll kind of be fine-tuning this as we get more budgeting in place, but this is something we're hoping to do. So this is a section drawing cut through the middle of that entry space. Here you'd be entering off the parking lot through the plaza. And the roof form of the building is helping you, I think, guide you through and welcome you into the building as it's pitching down, you enter. And then once you cross into the hall at the circ desk, the roof changes slope and kind of pitches back out and thrusts towards the south. So we have a large overhang at the south to help shade continuous clear story, which is a high window that lets in a lot of light up high, and that's going to bounce up off the ceiling and really daylight the space. So that, combined with the skylights, is going to create this really balanced, daylit space that the hope is a lot of times we won't need artificial light. And there you see the pavilion of the Story Lab picking up the slope of the entry roof on the opposite side. So we're highlighting some of the other sustainable features of the building here. In addition to the natural daylighting, we have a radiant floor slab for heating and cooling, which is a very energy efficient system and very suitable to this climate. And planning natural ventilation to flush the building, especially at night when the heat gets released from the floor slab of the building. The natural ventilation will take that hot air outside of the building as shown and really cool it off for the next morning. Other things, we already mentioned the solar panels. You can kind of see diagrammatically shown here. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Carl, who's going to take you through some views.
Thank you, Mike. So you see the site plan, which we've indicated about 11 perspective views, both interior and exterior, that Mike and I are going to walk you through. We're going to start at the southeast corner of the site, right at the location of where the bridge crosses over the creek, do a kind of clockwise loop around the building, come from the north at the ball fields and enter through the front door and go into the interior. As you've seen the presentation from Sarah, this is a building that's sort of situated within a very attractive landscape environment, and so a lot of the themes that we're trying to do is to stitch together both landscape and building with a lot of connectivity. So you'll see here the arrangement of all the trees that's proposed, but for the benefit of showing you the building and to not discredit everything that Sarah has done, you'll see that we've kind of made these trees relatively transparent so you can see the building. But in actuality, the landscape is going to be so great that the blend of building and landscape will be a really rich pairing. So here we are right at the edge of the creek with the landscape that Sarah described. At the very left, if I can get the pointer, this is the 3 pavilions that Mike described with the lounge here on the end, and the community room, community room with its glass facing onto the creek and the view and so forth. So you see the shape of the roof is a very distinctive shed, as Mike described, is facing from or leaning up to the south. So as we traverse along Oak Park, thought we'd show you a dusk time shot to give you a sense of the transparency, the ability to sort of see in, and for visitors to the library to see out. And the modulation of this facade with those three elements that we call the pavilions, they each have a very similar kind of material palette, but they're purposely designed to have different arrangement of windows to relate to the activities that are going on the inside, and to also describe a little bit of variation of what's going on throughout the library programming. In between these pavilions are a series of glass walls that are shaded with a series of louvers, and we'll show those in more detail later. But it allows view to the exterior and view inward, while at the same time protecting the building from incoming sun. So the objective of the sustainable strategies that Mike described was really to give the space a very welcoming daylit environment without all the incoming solar gain from the sun. The yard, you'll see here at the one end, is semi-enclosed, but also allow for visibility along Oak Park to see the activities that might be occurring in that space. Next view to the corner of Monticello and Oak Park. Again, the yard view, a semi-protected zone with its sort of transparency allowing the view in. At this point, there is a hint of the story area for the kids, not just the lab, but the sort of interactive zone just inside with underneath this sort of covered roof form. You saw this earlier. We have made the turn up Monticello, made the right turn into the parking lot. So as you arrive to the building, this would be your view, really aiming your turn right at the primary entrance. As Mike described, it sort of is rising up, welcoming gesture to all the visitors. So a dusk time view showing you the sort of openness and transparency, the welcoming character. And all these views will be up on those panels, so we'll get another chance for you all to see these a little later. Again, the trees are somewhat translucent to sort of show you the building, but this layering that Sarah described from the edge of the ball fields, which has its own landscape zone, the trees that are in between, the rows of parking, and then another row of trees in front of the building that's going to, I think, create a very kind of lush environment. So here's a little photo survey of the materials that we're proposing. So in order to get this very open building, we'll obviously have a window wall system with a great deal of glass, aluminum system purposely designed to deal with not only the heights, but the size of glass panels, a painted steel structure, and right now we're proposing that it be a very light color, perhaps a white, maybe not a pure white, but a white-like color. And it's augmented by a wood ceiling, and that wood ceiling, we're still looking at the shades. It may not necessarily be as dark as what's above, it may be a little bit lighter, but we're looking at this palette of a white and light-colored ceiling as being the feature of the underside of the roof. The roof material itself will be a light silvery standing seam to sort of kind of give it a little kind of glowing quality in the light. And then to deal with all the incoming sun are these mixture of horizontal and vertical oriented louvers to shade all this glass. The balance of the building, we're proposing some kind of a siding material, and you can see we're looking at more wood material, but also looking at the potential of a cement board, which is a very durable product. but also looking at the shade, the variation of color over time and the maintenance of all these materials as to whether or not this building would be, really suitable for a natural palette, or we're going to deal something with a much more of a neutral gray stain effect to sort of blend with the other materials. So this is still part of the process of our design development. Here we are at the front door, the welcoming plaza that we only recently developed this, so there's a lot of elements that are going to be part of this plaza. It won't be so wide open. We've got parking stalls, we have some other amenities, and then you can see the trees on both sides sort of shading or kind of framing your view to this entry door. Point out one thing that Mike described. This roof is, as he said, was sloping up, or as you enter, it's kind of coming down towards this point in which it pitches up. So even at this point here, before you even get in the building, you're beginning to see a glimmer of daylight as the roof kind of pitches back up. So once you get through the front door, you get to the story lab area.
Thanks, Carl. So we've gone through the front door with this view, and we're in that welcome space. And so, thanks, Carl. And so on the right side of this wall would be all the check-in, check-out stations, those display tables, and the circ desk right here. And then you're seeing the story lab beyond. And apologize if this seems a little washed out. I think the images we have on the boards will be a bit clearer, but you can see that clear story of windows along the south wall. You can see the ceiling coming down, and then it's pitching back up across that beam, and the clear story in that story lab pavilion, the full glass wall in between, and then the lounge pavilion over here. So once you get past the circ desk, this is looking back to the east. So this is across the adult collections, the community tech zone. There are a couple study rooms along this wall, and the community living room along that glass wall. Beyond the stacks, you see the lounge pavilion. Right here, that's the enclosed quiet reading room. And you can start to see the general palette of the exposed structure, our skylights, the suspended light fixtures. And even with the images washed out, but I think keeping the palette light is going to help with our daylighting scheme. So the lighter we can keep the ceiling in color, the natural daylight's going to balance out a bit better, and it'll reduce the glare, any glare that you would have if there were any dark materials. Here is looking at one of the open bays between the pavilions, so between the story lab and the maker space. This full height glass wall looking out towards Oak Park. And so we've got all these trees screening that view, and then these louvers are helping to shade low angle winter sun. And then our roof overhang here is shading this wall, the entire wall during the summer months. So that passive strategy of really fine tuning that wall and the overhang to get us a really beautiful daylit space. And you can see some of the working with our structural engineers on the seismic bracing and integrating all those details. We're looking here at the western edge of the building, we're in the early literacy area. This is an open area, flexible furniture for kids reading and kids play. And we have this millwork wall with shelving and integrated seating down at the lower level. And there you can see there are the doors on either side that lead out to that enclosed yard. And so it'll be a great way to kind of go outside and then come back in. You can see louvers up high on the west side to help shade the building from western sun. And then that roof overhangs outside another 20 feet. So it'll be fully shaded out there for 20 feet. And our last interior view here is of the quiet lounge space. This is back on the east side. So you see this middle zone here of shelving. We're going to study this a bit further in the coming months and the exact material palette of this room, but The idea being a lot of lounge seating in groups of two to three. So a great place to come and read, enjoy a view of the creek. And you can kind of see, we're showing some glass wrapping around, so you get a bit of a glimpse back into the main hall to keep you feeling connected even though you're in this room that's enclosed. So I'm going to close with this slide, which shows our approach when we start really specifying interior finishes and making some final decisions. We're going to be working over the next couple months as we get into construction documents on these final selections and working with the city committee. Keeping the palette pretty clean and classic and using pops of color to highlight some of these feature areas, whether that be with carpet, decorative light fixtures, and the color of furnishings can really make things pop, but you're not keeping it classic at the same time. We've mentioned our white steel structure, wood millwork. Most of the floor will be carpeted, which helps a bit with acoustics and comfort. Acoustical wall panels where needed, and painted wallboard, and we've got feature wood ceilings. And so we're going to be continuing to work on this portion of the project.
It's so wonderful to see you all again. It's been a year. It's so hard to believe. So we, as we continue to develop the interior space planning and the furniture and the layouts, continue to be excited about all the amazing things you're going to be able to do in your library. And remember when we came up with this list? And remember how many of us felt, how in the world can one building support all of these functions? So as we've been designing this 21st century library for all of the experiential learning that libraries are fostering today, not only are we designing spaces to intentionally support these activities, but the entire building can often accommodate multiple functions at any one time. So it's going to be highly flexible.
And you guys are going to help me grow that list. We're going to
Yes.
do even more in this building.
So sometimes we refer to this plan as the resting face of the library, but the resting face will never, ever, ever look like this after it opens. Patrick and his inventive team will always be transforming this library to be nimble and flexible and adaptable to all the amazing activities and programs that you all will enjoy.
Well, yeah, I feel like I've been at Pleasant Hill for a little over 8 years, and many of you have been using that library a lot longer. Well, I actually grew up with the library, but I've been working at that library for about 8 years. Think about how much it's changed in just that time. And so I'm just so excited about this design that's going to continue to flex and change and grow, because the next 8, 10, 20, 50 years, who knows what it's going to bring for us.
Anything is possible. So who's ready to take a tour? All right, front door. So what's going to be wonderful about when you come in is not only in that welcome area will the display be designed for popular materials, collections, the latest movies, the newest format and storytelling that hasn't even been invented yet. It also will be a place to showcase all the amazing creative projects that this group does day in and day out. On the way to the Cafe Vibe, the kind of bookstore area is going to feel just like the best bookstore in town. And then when you get into the Cafe Vibe area, it's going to be, what did I always say during programming? The first choice for the third place in Pleasant Hill. No cafe or coffee shop is going to beat it out, right? So it's going to be wonderful.
I feel like the beautiful models that we just saw, the renderings that we just saw, you see those display tables, but there's no books on them, right? It's just a model, and I feel like what's so wonderful about this opening, this welcome area, is you walk in and you'll be confronted with this amazing array of stories. That's the first thing that you're going to see. That and the friends of your neighbors. I love watching everybody bump into each other in a welcoming area of the current library, and I think this will be a wonderful place to bump into all your friends that you've made at the library or people in your neighborhood. Have those casual conversations in that first spot when you first step in the door.
The other nice thing about the cafe vibe space, and especially the extension to the exterior, is that at certain times of the day, it will act as the space for being alone together, but it also gives the option for, it's a messy space. We'll put the messy sticker on the cafe vibe. So at times when there's some intensive project-based learning happening in the Messy Maker Lab, there might also be like a pickup craft program after story hour for families that can also happen there. So it has multiple options. So finally, there is a story time space that will occupy the prominent location that the programming already occupies for the Pleasant Hill Library. So one of the things that's wonderful about this U-shaped space is that it really will hug the youth and their families and their caregivers. It'll also accommodate small groups, so folks feel like they're in an intimate setting when it's just 20 folks. It'll also accommodate the surge of 100 plus that Patrick and his team often bring in for story time. It also will be a theater for the youth to engage in the creation of stories themselves, just like the young man in the middle who's practicing VR, creating and practicing VR, and then a showcase for performance for young people.
I love your line of storytelling in all of its vibrant forms because I do think a lot of times we hear the story lab or storytelling lab and we're thinking about the Storytime rock concert on the left-hand side, but actually we're really talking about lots and lots of different kinds of storytelling. It's the programs that we have, puppet shows and music events, and yeah, definitely the stories that children and youth tell, but also for adults and teens as well. So I don't know if we want to flip.
Patrick was sending us programs. We said we need some adult programs and some images of what y'all are doing now. And on the left, you'll see, I don't know what the program was, but it was carved out in the middle of the library, totally not suited for the...
Yeah, some of you may have been to some of these programs that we have for adults. I think this might have been East Bay Regional Parks talking about, the flora and fauna in your backyard. We've also had, talks from the Asian Art Museum and author talks and all those kinds of things. Those, you probably have seen us in the library just pushing aside tables and chairs, a zone that was the teen center, 30 minutes before, then has to get converted into an adult auditorium and was a storytime lab, earlier in the day. It's incredible how much we're really stretching and pulling the worn out space that we have now. And the storytime lab is much more intentional about being able to do all of these things in a flexible space that's not just going to drive us crazy.
And what's going to be wonderful about the space is it'll accommodate performances, author talks, lectures, but it's been intentionally designed to not have that fourth wall so that we can extend programming when there's a surge. And what's nice about the image in the middle that we're showing to illustrate how that form behaves for the library is that it enables you to be in the library when you're in a program. And how many of you all have gone to a library and you go in the library and then you turn left off the vestibule to go into a multipurpose room, and sometimes you don't ever feel like you've ever been in or seen collections or the materials or the popular collections, that the programming is there to activate. So you'll be immersed in the library in all of the areas of the great room.
Also, welcoming folks into a program. You may happen into the library when you didn't know something was happening. We want to make sure that you're welcomed into that event, whether it is a story time or an author talk. We want it to be something where it's like, come on, drop in and grab a seat and enjoy this. We don't want to hide any of the magical experiences that we're trying to create.
So what's what's going to be wonderful about the space is you're not going through a dark corridor to make you feel like you're in the former conference room of the offices to get into the makerspace. But it's intentionally designed to foster project-based learning, and it also is going to have tons of storage and great natural light. And those were the two primary functional requirements that we heard loud and clear from the folks that conduct the maker programs.
I think about all the things that we're doing now, from Legos and the robots and the machine sewing, the eco studio that we have that's so wonderful, arts and crafts. There's so many different. We have quilting and knitting and weaving groups that often meet in there. There's so many other kinds of making that we haven't even scratched the surface on, and I'm just so excited to see a beautiful home for all the things that we do now. And really, I think maybe of all the spaces, this one is going to unlock so many possibilities that we hadn't even imagined before. But hands-on learning is the way of the future. There's so many folks of all ages, but kids especially, that learn in these different ways, and we really want to make sure that we've got a space where they can learn by doing.
Mm-hmm. Who wants the best view in the house? Peace and quiet. So what we would traditionally call the adult section of the library is now really designed to have the diversity of experiences and spaces and places that all of us need throughout the day. A view to the creek that's in the intergenerational community living room for us to be alone together. The quiet lounge for reflection and respite and escape. The technology area, the group studies of a variety of sizes and shapes. So it's nice because it will function even in this variety that we've identified. It will function to support all of the variety of needs that you all expressed you had in the library, both conventional and innovative.
I feel like for all the sort of boisterousness and buzz, that we've created at the Pleasant Hill Library, we all still really deeply want those places where we can just hear ourselves think. And there's, I feel like a shrinking number of those spaces in our world, right? This is going to be one of those spaces where you can just be with your thoughts and just dial it down a little bit and really fall into a good book. I want to crawl up in there right now and plop on that couch. It's going to be a really relaxing space. And with that view too, I just feel dappled light and just, the view of the creek, birds, and it's just going to be a really, really relaxing spot.
Okay, there's some moods of the day that this library will support. So who's been in the space from 3 to 4:30? So from 3 to 4:30, I often call it the teen takeover. But we design very intentionally this kind of triangle experiential of spaces so that there is a dedicated area for the teens and tweens that, honestly, this is such a blessing. The public library is such a blessing for that group of folks. So that they can come, they can hang out, be boisterous with each other, enjoy the peer group that they so desperately enjoy Patrick and his team in the hangout area. They can go get messy. And one of my librarians that we work with said, I want the teens to feel like they can return to themselves and their projects every time they come to the library. So that's what's going to be so great about the space, the Messy Maker for them. And they can also take over the Story Lab for any number of programs, whether it's after-school homework help or even their own creation of their own stories through a portable green screen, for example, to do, like my son is having to do book trailers, and he goes into his own closet so that he can get the sound to muffle. But they'll be able to come here and do all of their after-school multimedia projects.
Yeah, you've probably seen some of the pop-up programming that we try to do with our youth after school. This is a time, after a really intense day at school where a lot of them are just decompressing, right? And they just want a place where they can kick back and just chill with their friends. And there will be places for them to do that are appropriate and, that we've set aside specifically for them to just, decompress and socialize. But we also have created these spaces that really open up even more possibilities for us to sort of extend the learning and offer kinds of enrichment that they're really hungering for that they may not even be getting in the course of the school day. I just think it's so special what, the maker space and some of these flexible programming spaces are going to be able to offer us, where we can really listen to what teens want to do, have those conversations about, what would make this, space more comfortable for you. What are the things that you'd like to see and do? How do you want to unlock your creativity and express yourself? And now we'll actually have real spaces to do that.
And early literacy. We also heard very clearly the commitment that you all have to the youth and youth learning. And the location of the early literacy space has been traveling all over the building. And with its adjacency to this exterior, it's just going to be so wonderful for that seamlessness that will foster the play-based experiential learning, where recreation is so critical and vital, and there's permission to play at any level that a child needs to express themselves and to enjoy the multitude of activities that Patrick and his team are already conducting, whether it's reading at a Nook, whether it's, I love this picture, the second picture, that's a project about social and emotional learning through creating friendship.
Yeah, just learning through play, games, and just open-ended play, dramatic play that brings kids together, sometimes for the first time, right? Before they even get into preschool and kindergarten, right? This is where they're making their very first friends at the library.
And the continued environment that will be designed for hands-on learning. So this
is going to be a really fun space.
Yeah.
And again, really, really super flexible. There's just unlimited space for us to innovate on this and just sort of watch, based on kids and families' behavior and their demand, what we can provide and just change up the space, bringing in new furniture, new kinetics, pushing shelves around, which will be on wheels so that we can just do different kinds of things in this space. Just unlimited flexibility, which is, it's going to be so wonderful.
And then the variety of spaces that Sarah's already spoken to in such great detail that you all have outside to extend the programming. So you don't just have one play yard, you're going to have the promenade as you walk in that's going to be filled with dappled light, that before you even step into the building, you're going to feel good. And the activity yard that's going to have multi-purpose and be able to support all varieties of learning. And then the opportunity for an outdoor reading room to extend that alone together reflection that only a garden can really do and accommodate.
Yeah, the weather here is so great, right? I mean, just imagine, just grabbing a chair out there underneath the shade. It's going to be so, so lovely with the views, too. But yeah, I feel, too, like the promenade and entry, we really don't have that now, right? I mean, we have a pretty sad little patio. And so for every kid that's waiting to get picked up, everybody who's, finding a spot to just have a sandwich before heading back in the library, this is going to be a really, really nice place to hang out and wait and, connect with other people. And that activity yard, too, I'm really pumped about because, that sort of zone that's outdoors but is still really tied to the indoor space. I think especially for youth, being able to get out and run around and then, dial it back down and come indoors, having different ways to play indoors and out. And for the really, really messy stuff, right, we can take the really messy stuff outside. There's just so many possibilities here. I know that you're going to bring even more energy and ideas to all of these exterior spaces, and they're just going to be magical.
So who's ready to come on in?
I seriously am ready to climb up in that. I've been waiting so long to see this come to fruition. I think I mentioned, I grew up with the library we have, and working with this team, of course, working with the city. I mean, you can probably see, I just can hardly contain myself. This is going to be such a special building, and the spaces that they've started to shape for us are just so tremendous. But I feel it's really you guys out here. You guys are going to be the ones to breathe life into this building when you come into it, and it is going to breathe. All day long. It's going to ebb and flow with different energies and different folks wanting to do different things. All of that's going to be welcome, and now all of it will have a place. So thank you guys.
Okay. All right. So, thank you guys. Whoa, let there be light. So we thought that we want, all of this that we've seen today has come about not out of a vacuum. It's come about through interactions and through comments that we've received from a variety of different sources. And this is another opportunity where we really want to solicit your input, which is, I think the community in this case is really helping to shape what this building is and how it's going to be used. And I just love the idea of this building sort of coming to life through the activities, and really, that's what's going to give it life. Thank you.